Belton Abbey sits to the east side of Josephine Hills, nestled in a wooded valley away from prying eyes. Like tombstones rising from the soft green earth, the dawn is damp and moist from an evening of steady rain, and the world smells fresh and clean as the ambulance pulls up and through the gates. The guards get out and slowly withdraw the stretcher, where Christopher lies bound and motionless. Doors open, and the wooden beams of the first floor pass through his view as he is rolled through the basement and to a large elevator that would lead him to the first floor. The elevator is dimly lit, but as soon as it opens he can make out a woman in a white coat awaiting the guards. "Good morning, gentlemen. I see you've brought our new patient." She smiles and looks down to Christopher, who wide-eyed stares back blankly. "Good morning, Christopher. I'm Lucinda. I'm the head nurse here at Belton and will be assisting Dr. Stevens in your treatment." She places her hand on Christopher's shoulder and squeezes gently. The contact eases the tension building in Christopher's body, and for a moment he seems at peace. Once on the first floor, Lucinda leads the guards towards two large green doors, which open after she swipes a badge just to their right. "I'll take him from here, guys, thanks." She smiles and the guards make their way back towards the elevator. Pushing the stretcher through the doors, Christopher cannot help but see an illuminated exit sign as they pass through. He wants nothing more but to run and escape whatever is to lay ahead of him. His mind swirls and the world fades into and out of view. Then there is darkness, and in that darkness Mary approaches him, the smell of her hair sweet on the wind as she does so. She embraces him and wraps his body in her warmth. Then she lessens her grip and places a small kiss on his jawline before smiling at him. "You need to wake up, Christopher." She looks down towards the floor, and as his gaze shifts with hers, he looks at black boots resting in place of her usual flats. He looks back up to question her and is greeted by Gus, standing in the place where Mary had been. A smile grimaces across his face, and his eyes widen in excitement. "Tell her we said hello," he shouted, and suddenly smacks Christopher across the face, sending the world around him swirling into a flood of white light. When he awakes, Christopher is sitting in an empty room under a large light, which burns his eyes as they adjust to the sudden brightness. Just beyond the hanging fixture, a poster of a kitten hanging on a wooden fence commands him to hang in there as it stares down at him. The room is cold and smells of disinfectant and bleach. He turns his head, examining the room around him. Off-white walls and green countertops, and fixtures adorned with multiple tools and small bottles of medications and liquids surround him everywhere he can see with his limited mobility. Down the hall, footsteps echo as they approach his location, and their sounds mimic the mechanical pulse that creeps its way through his every memory. And as they do so, Dr. Stevens steps into the room. He looks at Christopher and smiles, motioning in his direction slightly with a clipboard of paper, then turns towards a small countertop and sink to the right of the door, where he then washes his hands. The automatic door lock clicks again loudly, and in steps Lucinda, who joins the doctor and also washes her hands. They converse amongst themselves, and although he strains to hear their words, the sound of the water rushing from the tap drowns out their voices until they have finished. Dr. Stevens looks through the papers on his clipboard, and then approaches Christopher laying bound on the stretcher. "Good morning, Christopher. How are you doing today?" He looks from his papers down to Chris. Christopher looks up silently, his voice failing him as he tries to speak, and the darkness that wraps his mind strangles his thoughts, and he struggles to stay awake. The mechanical pulse thumps its way methodically through his every thought. Dr. Stevens nods and continues. "I know you're not much of a talker, but I think we can get you through this with the proper treatments." He smiles and checks his temperature with the back of his hand resting upon Christopher's forehead before turning to the nurse. "Let's get his temperature, and we will run some basic blood tests to begin with. Depending on what they say, we'll go further from there. Lucinda nods and begins to gather things from the cabinets across the room, placing each item on a small chromed cart before rolling it towards them in the centre of the room. The cart squeaks its way across the tiles, and the sound sends shivers through Christopher's body as it nears. Dr. Stevens looks over Christopher's jaw and mouth momentarily and nods to himself. Looks like you've healed up well, all things considered. He adjusts his glasses and again scribbles notes on his clipboard. Okay, Christopher, you're going to feel a small pinch, but everything is going to be okay. Lucinda speaks caringly as she ties a rubber band around his bicep. The stinging burn of a needle piercing flesh draws his attention for a moment, and inside he screams, but his body refuses to let his reaction escape. Lucinda tapes an IV down to his forearm, then begins to pull blood from it. Dr. Stevens shines a small flashlight into each of Christopher's eyes. Normal pupil dilation, he writes on his clipboard. Lucinda seals the phials of blood and puts a thermometer under Christopher's tongue, holding it in place until it beeps before withdrawing it. She turns it and shows it to Dr. Stevens before going to collect the blood phials and leaving the room. 99 degrees, said Dr. Stevens, and again looks over Christopher. You are a mystery to me, Christopher. What is it that's stopping you from responding? He places his clipboard down on the rolling cart and moves several different tools around on it before turning back to Chris. We're going to be starting a new treatment for you today. I spoke to your wife, Clarissa, and we've agreed that this is the best option moving forward to get you to come back to us. Dr. Stevens moves around the table, dragging the cart with him to the other side before pulling out 2 small bottles, one full of a yellow fluid and one filled with a blue fluid, and hanging them upside down on the IV stand. He fumbles with tubes and assembles a system to tie the bottles into the IV into Christopher's forearm. This is an experimental treatment, Christopher, but I think it will help release you from whatever this is that's holding you back from us. He taps the yellow bottle slightly, and Christopher's eyes move to see it now swaying on the stand. This is acetrion. It will help you. He pauses and then continues. It will help open your mind up to the process we're going to be trying. He smiles and nods to himself in confirmation. Tapping the blue bottle, Christopher now looks to it and then back to Dr. Stevens. This is cremosopan. Together with the acetrion, it makes a substance called crematrion, which is the substance that we will be using to help wake you. Do you understand? Christopher looks back up to the ceiling and inhales deeply for a moment before nodding. Above him, a poster of a kitten hanging atop a wooden fence stares down, telling him to hang in there as it does so. Dr. Stevens turns towards the IV stand and opens valves that release the 2 medications. They mix into a greenish-gold fluid as they make their way down the tubes and towards the IV resting in Christopher's forearm. Just before the fluid reaches, Dr. Stevens flatly states, "There will be a burning sensation, but it will pass. It'll be over soon." With his words having just passed his lips, the fluid reaches the IV, and in an instant fire erupts under the skin of Christopher's arm. Moments later, his entire body explodes into seizures of pain, and he thrashes upwards in his bindings to no success. The pain is unbearable as he falls back to the stretcher, and sweat pours from his body as he turns to look back to Dr. Stevens. The doctor watches him silently and nods. "It's almost done, Christopher. Just a moment or 2 more." The words echo in Christopher's ears, and the world around him seems to hurt his every nerve as a fog of darkness cloaks everything slowly. Just before unconsciousness sets in, the mechanical pulse of the Canary Button Company pulsates its way through his mind, greeting him with its darkness like the arms of an old friend. Hey fearsome friends, thanks for listening. Please make sure you subscribe and click that notification button so you can be aware of all my videos when they upload. If you have a story that you'd like to hear me record, then please send it to my subreddit, are Miss FearSoMe83, or alternatively email me at missfearsome83@hotmail.com. If you'd also like to support me further, please go to my Patreon and join for as little as $1 a month, where you'll get early access to all my recordings, and they will also be available as MP3 downloads. I also have some awesome merch on the Spreadshirt website. All links are in the description below. Stay safe, stay happy, and remember, keep being creepy.